But going back to the testimonies, it's been, we've all gone through these hardships and these times, but when He comes through, it's a blessing that you can't describe. What's even better is when you don't ask. You know, when you feel like you're on that island, when you feel like you're by yourself, and you just didn't have time to pray or to ask God about it, He lets you know that He's there. And the smallest things that you do, from your presence to giving out candy, is something that God can work through. I was at work and I was working, and I've had a lot on my mind, had things come up, and it started piling up. One right after another, and before you know it, you're just, and then you got work, and then you're out there working, and it's hot. Then I had a gentleman come up, and he wanted to see if I could take a package for him. He didn't have no label or nothing, and I explained to him, and his son had an app. I said, I can't help you. And he said, well, I understand. I said, you take it to the store and they'll walk you through it. He said, all right. And I know the guy, and he's real nice. And he was sucking on a piece of candy. And he reached in his pocket. He said, man, take some of this. He said, I've got a bag and I'm eating that whole bag. He said, I love them. He said, I can't quit eating them. He gave me a handful of lifesavers. And buddy, I looked down, and you're just having that bad day. And it looked like the same lifesavers that I ate. And when I go to church, she always sits in front of me. She reaches back and she gives me those lifesavers. That touched me. She's there. She don't testify, but she's always there. And she hands me those lifesavers. But that lifesaver wasn't, it reminded me of her first. As soon as I popped it in my mouth, I knew the taste of it. What did it do? It took me back to church. What did church does for me? It takes me back to God. It takes me back to Him. And He said, no matter what you're going through, son, no matter what is burden on your mind, I'm your lifesaver.
Yeah.
I've got you. He gave me a whole handful, and I ate on them, and I didn't ask for it, wasn't prepared for it, but He was showing me that I know what you're going through.
Yeah.
I've got you covered.
Yeah.
I'm your lifesaver. So no matter what you do in this church, you might think you might not be doing something beneficial or something extravagant. You are still a tool that God uses, whether you know it or not. And that little lifesaver was for me that day. But to start off with our lesson, a parable of a great dinner, I'm going to start off to the beginning of the chapter because it runs together, but I want to show you where the mindset of the Pharisees were when Jesus told this parable. And it says, and it came to pass as He went into the house of one of the chief Pharisees to eat bread on the Sabbath day, that they watched Him. So here they are, they went to church, and He was at the chief Pharisee's house. And more than likely, all the Pharisees was there. There was, they had a select group that they invited. It was a dinner, and they invited Jesus, and they were there to watch Him. And behold, there was a certain man before Him which had the dropsy. And the dropsy is, it involves swelling, build-up of fluid on a person. And Jesus answering spake unto the lawyers and the Pharisees, saying, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath day? And they looked at Him, and they held their peace. And they took Him And he took him and healed him, and let him go. And answered him, saying, which of you shall have an ass or an ox fallen into a pit, and will not straightway pull him out of the Sabbath day? Now he was sitting there having this little dinner with the Pharisees and lawyers. They were the followers and they were the makers of the law of that day. And he was getting they had made so many laws to keep everything so holy that the Sabbath regulations had become so unbalanced in practice that it was indeed permissible to have mercy on a beast, but not on a person. And he asked them that question. They couldn't say. They didn't want to say because they thought they might shoot themselves in the foot. So they was going to let him work. And then he healed the man. And then he turned it on and he said, now, is this man not as worth more than an ass or an ox? And they could not answer him again to these things. And he put forth a parable to those which were bidden, which he marked how they chose out of the chief rooms, saying unto them, when thou art bidden of any man to a wedding, sit not down in the highest room, let more of an honorable man than thou be bidden of him. And he that bade thee, and him come and say to thee, give this man place, that thou begin with shame to take the lowest room. But when thou art bidden, go and sit down in the lowest room, and that he that bade thee cometh, he may sit unto thee, friend, go up higher. Then shalt thou have worship in the presence of them that sit at meat with thee. For whosoever exalteth himself shall be abased, and he shall humble himself shall be exalted. Then he said also to him that bade him, when thou makest a dinner or a supper, call not thy friend, nor thy brethren, neither thy kinsmen, nor thy rich neighbors, lest they also bid thee again, and a recompense be made thee. But when thou makest a feast, call the poor, the maimed, the lame, the blind, and thou shalt be blessed, for they cannot recompense thee, for thou shalt be recompensed at the resurrection of the just. Now the upper room was for the people that was closest to the wedding supper. And he said, don't go sit in the highest room, sit in the lowest, and let them ask you to come up. Before you might go up, and they may ask you to go down. Because there was somebody maybe higher than you. So, he was trying to teach them to be humble. And to keep yourself humble. And because at this supper, it says he was trying to say that we can invite our friends and our family and they would come. But it was the people that's the poor and the sick and the hungry, those are the people that have nothing. And that we could share ourselves with them. For our friends and family will be there. So, and I read this whole first part of this chapter to get how the situation was coming about.
Yeah.
The Pharisees was there. They were watching him. They were testing him. And he was throwing out these parables, which only Jesus himself can do. A parable, it's got the ability to reveal itself and to conceal itself. It all depends on how you listen to the story. I can listen to a parable and get one meaning, and you can listen to a parable and get a different meaning. Just the same as a sermon. We all hear the same sermon, but God will give us different meanings to pertain to us. So here we are at the beginning of what our lesson is supposed to be about in verse 14. Verse 15, going through 24. Now we're back in your quarterly. And it says, and When one of them that sat at meat with him heard these things, he said unto him, Blessed is he that shall eat bread in the kingdom of God. Then said he unto him, A certain man had a great supper and bade many. But let's go back to 15. When I can just picture them at this table. We're in this room and they're eating. And you can just see a Pharisee rear back, said, Blessed is the man, blessed is the man that will eat at the kingdom of God. And I could imagine maybe he even raised his cup, boastful himself.
Yeah.
And at the same time, Jesus, he could have done what we would probably done. You think you're going there, son? You think you have the audacity or the holiness and the righteousness to deserve to walk and have that great supper? He didn't condemn him, but he was going to show him who's invited to that supper and to see if this man or if these men could get this parable and understand where he was coming from. So Jesus heard this man say this. Then he said unto him, A certain man had a great supper and bade many, and sent his servant at supper time to say to them that were bidden, Come, for all things are now ready. And they all with one consent began to make excuse. So in the biblical times, usually you would send out an invitation and you would accept yea or nay. And then as time got ready and the food was ready to be prepared, they sent out the second invitation to say, it's ready. Jesus was sending out an invitation as we see it today. As we read this, when he came to this world, he sent out the first invitation. And the Jews did not accept it. But the invitation is still out. Mm-hmm. Now the supper's ready. Now he's sending out the second invitation. And as we read, and they all with one consent began to make excuses. The first said unto him, I have bought a piece of ground, and I must needs go and see it. I pray thee, have me excuse. Now in biblical, and even in today's time, nobody buys a piece of property and not look at it. This was supposed to be sarcastic in Jesus' time as sarcastic as it is today. Nobody buys land that you've never seen.
That's a lame excuse.
Unless you're just really wanting to help somebody out and say, man, they need money, I'll buy it. Now we get to the second one. Another said, I have bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I have go to prove them. I pray thee, have me excused. 5 yoke. That's 10 ox. Even today, you go buy 10 ox, it's going to cost you. I couldn't imagine how much 10 ox would cost you in that time. Especially if you were a farmer, you don't know what kind of ox you're buying. You need these ox to work. That is a very, very expensive purchase.
That's a big tractor, ain't it?
That's a big tractor. You've got 10 ox. And I know today, nobody will go buy a car unless they test drove it, looked at it. Because before you bring it off that lot, you're looking for the tiniest towel scratch on it. Because you want it brand new when you walk off there. So, this man says, I've already bought it. I want to go look at it. Another said, I have married a wife and therefore I cannot come. Most of your suppers or banquets was for men only to start off with. And then for him to be just married, that was a lame excuse as itself. So they're all using excuses. Now, how many times have we made excuses to God when He first called us?
Yeah.
And we all have. I very seriously doubt that if any one of us accepted God the very first time He called us.
My first response was, I didn't think I was capable.
Yeah.
I think he should have called somebody else in the church. And, I was leaning on not doing it because I didn't think I was capable.
Right.
Yep.
And a lot of us do that. A lot of us think we're not capable. A lot of us think we're not worthy. That we're just too far gone. My God is way stronger than our too far. No matter how simple you think you may be, it is nowhere near the mercy and grace that He has shed for you.
Amen.
I love my kids, no matter what they do. I love them.
That's right.
And we are His children. No matter what we'll do, He'll still love us. And He wants you. I want my kids to do good. I want my kids to be close. I want my kids to be in line. And I'll do what I have to keep them that way. Just like God will do it to us. But He loves you. And there is no excuses, for you to not to answer that call. You answer it. It's either yes or it's a no. There's no excuses. So the servant came and showed his lord these things. Then the master of the house, being angry, said to his servant. Now, he was angry. God gets angry with us when we say no to Him. This is Jesus' words, and this is a parable. And here He's got people, He's calling to this banquet. God has set up a place for us. He wants us to be there. He's got a supper that has a place at the table for us. And then when we make these excuses not to follow Him, He gets angry because He knows what we're doing. He's seeing your petty excuses is going to deter you from the splendors of heaven that I prepared for you. What little time you have on this earth. You may spend 70 to 100 years on this earth, but it's a drop in a bucket to eternity.
That's right.
But we cannot grasp that in our heads because we think of today and now. We do not have the concept of eternity. We lose that concept. Listen, eternity is going to be eternity in heaven or in hell. And He knows if you deny Him or use these petty excuses, that's where you're going, and it angers Him. Why? Because He loves us. I do not want to see my kids go down a road or a path that will not benefit them. So it upsets me when they don't do what I say, when I know what the outcome is going to be. I can tell them to get ready for a certain situation, and they'll procrastinate about it, or they won't do it. And then when the time comes and they're not ready or they're not prepared, then you have to let them say, all right, these are your consequences. This is what you're going to have to face. And that's what He's going to have to do with us. These are the consequences that you have put. I had a place for you at this table. I've offered you. And you gave me excuses. And now I'm angry with you. But what he's in this parable, he's angry that they're not accepting Him.
Right.
they're not accepting the invitation to be, what they're accepting me not to be a Christian. But so God is getting angry that they're not accepting his invitation to come to the supper, which in real life we're looking at you're not accepting Jesus. So he gets angry. He says, go out quickly into the streets and lanes of the city and bring in hither the poor and the maimed and the halt and the blind. So here you have a certain man, which is God, extending this invitation. So you have a certain group that is making all these excuses not to come. So he told his servant, go extend the invitation. I want the maimed, the halt, and the blind to come to my supper. And the Lord said unto him, go out to the highways and the hedges. You hear that often, and to compel them to come. Well, Jesus and God, they want this place filled. Now we can go up and down in the vicinity to try to fill this, but if we can't fill it with, say, Ashford people, then we need to go out further and fill this church. It's our duty. It's our call. The highways and the hedges. When that meant for this servant to go further out than what the town was. So he had to do what? He had to work harder. And if you ever delivered, if you had a house with a hedge around it, it's a little harder. You can't skip through people's yards. You may see the house, but it might take you longer to get there. You're going to have to work. We know what the call is. We know what our duty is. And sometimes we got to get out of our box to get to that person, because that person is precious. Jesus is saying, I want that person. Jesus is telling me, I want you to go through these hedges, because my people, that person is precious to me, and I want you to work to get around or through that hedge to invite this person to come to my dinner. Because that's how hard, that's how much I love them, and that's how hard I want you to work. I want you to get out there. Now, we know, we asked a little bit, we need to persevere. We need to get out there and go out of our box to get to that person, because that person is precious to him. He wants his house full. For I say unto you that none of those men which were bidden shall taste of my supper. The people that said they was going to come and gave these excuses, they're not going to taste of the supper. He wants us. He wants a willing heart. We've got a job to do.
Amen.
He loves us, and he wants us to take as many people as we can.
That's right.
He wants us to be a witness. From a tiny lifesaver can mean a whole lot to somebody. Just to being a witness in this church. So when you go out and do something big, you don't know how many lives you will touch. But I know one thing. He wants us to go out in the highways and through the hedges to get his people. Because he's got a supper planned for us. There's a place that our minds cannot grasp of how glorious it's going to be. And what little bit of pain, what little bit of suffering is nothing compared to eternity with him.
Amen.
But Paul said, we got a race to run. Paul ran his race. We have no idea what persecution is. we can see things coming. The way how they make the laws, you know, it makes it harder, but nowhere near what they faced. So we need to be about our Father's business, because there's a supper to go to, and it's going to be a blessing. It, like Kiki said, words can't describe it because we haven't seen it. But, and I'll just leave it with that. Words cannot describe it. But there is an invitation, and there's a seat, and it has your name on it. And I beg you, if you hear that call, take your seat at the table.